hell's my book? No, the
What's it called?
ARC book. Oh, shit. Hello, and welcome to Parenting Beyond Belief. I'm one of your three hosts. My name is Clare Wuellner, and I am on the board of the ACA and president of the board of Foundation Beyond Belief and parent of a 13 and 16-year-old. And with me today, Noelle George, who is, you want to do you?
Sure,
Yeah.
I'll do me. I'm pretty good at doing me.
All right.
I'm Noelle George. I'm the executive director at Foundation Beyond Belief and founder of the Facebook group Mothers Beyond Belief.
Which is amazing. If you're not on it, get on it. It's probably my favorite Facebook group.
Really?
Yeah. The women there really just lay it all out. They lay bare their souls, and I think it's a really good place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great accomplishment. And Miss Kendall, all the way from the West Coast.
That's right.
Go on. Tell me about yourself, Miss Hopkins.
I'm a activist, podcaster, YouTuber, loudmouth, and a mother of a 3.5-year-old.
Yeah, kick-ass single mom. And a full confession, I took a migraine pill before the show, and I'm feeling a little high. And we've been laughing before the show, so this might be a little bit different. In fact, I forgot my Noah's Ark book to read. It's somewhere in this room, but I don't know where it is. That's how high I am right now. But we're going to talk about good stuff. And in fact, ironically, one of the things we're going to talk about is know your
Drug paraphernalia.
Drug paraphernalia,
Paraphernalia,
which
yeah.
is ironic. So
Yeah, we're going to talk about drugs today.
yeah, let's talk about drugs. And yeah, this is a prescription drug, and it's fine. The alternative is a migraine, which is no fun. Oh my God. Noelle just found it. It's underneath another book. Here it is. Oh my gosh. I hope everybody out there in YouTube land is laughing because it's, we're just going to roll with it today.
Yeah.
So we on this show are brought to you by the Atheist Community of Austin, which strives for the separation of religion and government, as well as representing positive atheism. We also believe in promoting civil rights and treating people well and working to make the world a better place through action, like giving or working charitably. Let's see. We discuss parenting and share our stories and give advice. And according to people who have watched the show, we're doing pretty good. I'm feeling like we've made some people's lives a little easier. We get email, and it's very rewarding. We were not sure at first if this was going to be something that would work. And the feedback is positive, so we're going to keep on bringing this to you because you all say you like it and get a lot out of it, which makes me very happy. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. And if you want to support us, you can go to Patreon and find Parenting Beyond Belief and give us a little money each month. I've already talked about the hosts, so we can go on to actual content.
And real quick, just so you know, we actually just hit 1,000 subscribers too.
Holy crap, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yay.
yay.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you to everyone.
That's so exciting.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
That's
everyone
like-
who subscribes.
Right.
Yeah, that's great.
That's wonderful. The last time I looked, it was just at 750, and that wasn't too long ago. So I think our growth is becoming exponential, which is very
be
nice.
fantastic.
Right on.
We want to make sure that people know that they can call into the show as well and ask us questions.
We want callers. We love your questions.
And we also have Super Chat
Which
enabled.
is enabled. So hop in there and speak your mind. The number to call, if you want to call us with any question that has to do with raising children in a secular fashion, is 512-686 0279. And if you didn't get that, I think it's on the screen, but it's so small I can't really see it. I think I see 0279 at the end. Thank you, Miss Kendall, with the good eyesight. I want to, there are two announcements. One is that the April newsletter from the ACA is out. It is a lovely publication. It has pretty much become a magazine. So all you have to do to subscribe to that is email the ACA, and we can get you on the list for that. And another thing that's important, we're going to talk about two things primarily today. One is identifying some drug paraphernalia, because it's different from when I was a kid. My kids come home and talk about it, so I have some clue, but it's all new, y'all. And so that, and then we're also going to talk about how to parent your children so that they are conscious of being inclusive. We are specifically going to focus on one area of that, and that is gender, sexual orientation, and bodily autonomy, all things that have to do mostly with male, female, gender. Help me! I'm swimming in my head.
Gender identity,
and sexual orientation.
Thank you.
Two areas.
Yes, I've said my brain feels like it's full of bubbles.
You're doing great.
I'm doing great. Thank you. And so we are aware that there are many things that need to be covered when you're parenting in order to bring up good people. And there's race and
even religion.
Yeah, we've done that too. Ooh, that's a good one. And we're not going to talk about those. We are a bunch of white women, and so for us to talk about how to parent properly about race would be just
disrespectful.
It would be bad and wrong. And we have Mandisa as one of the hosts, and she couldn't be with us today. So we will cover that on its own show entirely.
And possibly have another guest who would be able to add another perspective, because Mandisa's perspective is important, but it's not the only perspective for folks of color. So,
for sure. And okay, so shall we? Let's talk about drugs. Shall we talk about drugs? Oh Lordy. So the way this topic came up, we were fishing around for topics, and one of the people on the other side of the wall there said that he had photographs of stuff that came from his world, and could we tell which was paraphernalia and which was just like a USB port? And he sent a picture out, and we're all going, I don't know. So can we put that picture up?
Let's put the picture up.
Put the picture up.
So we have a bunch of devices that are numbered. And I don't think we should. Let's let them, give them a chance to guess, the audience. So I have my guesses in my head, but I think let's take a look at this. We have several numbered devices here. Some of them are computer devices, and some of them are devices that have to do with drugs, that are drug paraphernalia or have something to do with drug paraphernalia. So,
and they all look remarkably similar, and there are 9 of them, because some people are listening to the podcast and not seeing what we're seeing.
Yes, so there are 9 devices.
They're very similar.
So if you are watching this live, we're going to give you a few seconds. If you're not watching it live, you can pause at the moment and do the test yourself if you want, or do the check yourself. And then, but now we're going to talk about what our guesses were.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know. I was so, they're behind me, so I'm looking back here. I am so naive that I thought, well, any one of those could be a USB port, except for the thing that kind of looks like a flashlight. And any one of those things could be a jewel made to look like a USB port, because I know they're super sneaky. My son is in high school, and he says it's everywhere, and kids sneak it all the time, and it's very easy to sneak. They're small. They don't look like anything. And so I was like, I don't know.
Let's define what a jewel is for those who don't know.
Spelt J-U-U-L. It's a way of vaping with a really small little doohickey instead of the larger vaping pens that you see. And so up there, I promise you, is at least one juuling device.
At least one jewel.
Yeah.
So who?
Now, those are not exclusively for drugs, right? Those can be used just to vape with, I think.
Or smoking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or nicotine. Or
Yeah. However, I think
Yeah,
if the kid
we know
is
that-
vaping. Yeah. Oh, Mom, it's not
Right.
got anything bad in it. Yeah. It's just we're just educating. You do with it what
Right.
you will as a parent.
Yes.
All righty.
Right.
So how about
So-
you all? What do you think?
I know we got sent the key, but I don't even remember.
Well, I
But
had two guesses right up front, so I'll tell those ones. You want to go first, Kendall, and then I
Sure.
had two that I thought were pretty likely right up front.
Yeah, so my first guess was 2 because it looks big enough to hold something in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think my next guess was 4.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My guesses were 4 and 7. I was very reasonably sure that those were drug items. Number 1 is a flashlight that was used to store weed.
So it actually is.
So it actually is. Number 2 and 3 are both USB devices. I'm going to run out here by the time we get to 9 from my memory of stating these. Number 4 is a jewel, I believe. Number 5 is also a USB.
Oh, there's the labels for you.
Yeah, okay,
There are
I
the
can't
labels.
see them back there.
Right.
And then the 8 and 9 they are electronics, but they have to do with the jewel device, I think. I can't actually read what's up there.
Nicotine cartridge on the far right.
Oh, yeah.
Which does.
And the vape charger.
And a vape charger, which looks exactly like a USB device.
And 7 we can't quite see. That 7 is also, 4 and 7 were the ones that I thought were
Right.
devices. I can't remember what 7 was, but it is something.
Yeah. And the fact that the flashlight was used to store drugs means that you have to, oh boy, I really feel for parents who have to deal with this because trust is broken. And
Kids are just getting smarter and more clever every day.
yeah, you have to navigate a very hairy world. And I can't imagine. So I don't know if we ever want to do a show just on that. I would have to sit out because I am super, other than my sweet migraine buzz that I'm on right now, migraine pill buzz, I'm pretty boring. So
Well, I would also say that when I was younger, at one point, my mom was worried about me, which, I mean, she should have been worried. And it didn't really have to do with drugs, but just more kind of depression. And she read my journal. And so, my perspective is that you lose your kids' trust if you violate their privacy. No matter what. So you better have a damn good suspicion or a damn good reason to do that, because otherwise you're going to lose your kid's trust. And your kid may have lost your trust, but it does go both ways. You have to think about your kid having trust in you as well. And I actually don't write in journals anymore because I haven't for a long time, because I feel like I always feel like I'm writing something for someone to read at some point. Like, I don't feel like I'm just writing whatever I would write. So I actually don't write in journals anymore partly because of that.
it's too.
And I mean, she was right to be
Vulnerable.
worried. And, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that if we have good reason. But I'm also advocating to really think about it when we do it. And my daughter's going to be 8 next month, so we've got a little way to go, I hope. I do have some experience with doing drugs, but it was mostly, as an adult, as a younger adult. So,
Yeah. Well, my mother also, I was as straight-laced and as boring as a kid could be. So there was nothing to worry about, and I think they knew it. But I had a big plastic bag full of all the notes. Back before texts, kids, we passed notes. And I had a big bag of notes, and I loved all of them. Well, my mother, she read them all. And I was devastated, and she just downplayed it like it wasn't any big deal. And I'm like, no, that's a big deal. I don't have much in this world, and as far that's mine, and you just violated that. So before you do that sort of thing, think hard about it. And I actually wanted to do a show on privacy because I have a friend. She was actually on Godless Bitches a few weeks ago about going down to the border to help with folks who are crossing the border. But she is a writer, and she wrote an article that went viral about allowing your children to have their privacy. And I want to talk about that in more detail because parents have strong opinions about this. I'm paying for the cell phone, so I should be able to see everything that's on there, versus, hey, they're their own person and they're learning how to be grown-ups, and so you have to give them room to screw up. And in between, where are you? So
on the other side of the coin too, though, I had the same experience of writing in diaries about my depression from, I would say it was probably 7th, 8th grade. And when my mom found out that I had depression, she kind of laughed at me, and it was a really awful experience.
Sorry.
But for parents, no, it's okay. I mean, you and I have talked about narcissistic mothers, and that's what I was up against. But I had a mother who cared more, if she had read my diary, I could have possibly gotten help way sooner than I did, because I didn't end up getting onto antidepressants till I was 20, I think, on my own. So I think there is something to be said for, and I do agree that kids need their privacy, but at the same time, if you can find something and not tell them that you violated their privacy while kind of coaxing them to tell you if something's wrong, I think that could be a useful tool. So it's complicated.
Yeah. There are cases where they can't, but I know with my kiddos, they've both been through rough patches, and I pay attention. No one paid attention to me when I was growing up, and I think that was pretty common in that age. It was the way they raised kids was kind of free range entirely. So if somebody had been paying attention, they would have known something was that I was depressed as well. Now I think we pay attention more, and I don't think I would have to. This is me personally. I don't think I'd have to get into my kids' stuff to know if they were having a problem, but I could be super naive. Yeah.
Right.
So,
and I think on the note of, how much you were kind of saying, like, they start on, there's that balance of, do they have, how much free rein do they have or whatever, and how much privacy do they have? Because like my daughter at 7 is not going to have the same amount of privacy now that she has at 16. But, one thing that I think we really need to think about doing with intention is how much free rein we give our kids, because and this isn't necessarily a secular issue. This is a parenting issue, which is that if you grow up in a kind of a controlling environment, like I did, I had kind of a controlling mom and a dad who was kind of not there as much. He was there, but he wasn't as involved, which is typical for growing up in the 80s, which is when I did most of my growing up, and. Two things. I have a younger brother. So 2 things happened in our family. I rebelled and I moved out when I was 16. And I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm going to do it on my own because it was too much for me. I needed that independence, some independence. And for my brother, he kind of just went along with it. And then by the time he got to college and he was on his own, it was like all the freedom, like when you leave religion.
Kind of went over the top.
When you leave religion and all of a sudden you're not having those constraints anymore, right? A lot of our audience probably knows what that's like. And you leave religion and then all of a sudden you're like, I can do all the things. And so, it's like that. If you don't slowly and kind of intentionally decrease the amount of of control and independence and freedom that your kid has, then they're going to be completely unprepared when they turn 18. So,
you're training them to be independent. You're not training them to have to depend upon you.
Right. Yeah. And we're training them to be resilient, and we're training them to survive in the world. And that means that we don't just all of a sudden like keep them in lockdown, and then all of a sudden when they're 18, it's like, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
we gotta let them have those experiences and those experiments and those things while they're in high school, or while it's safe, before they go away to college or before they move out, or whatever their trajectory is. And that will help prepare them for the world, I think. So that's something that I advocate for.
Yeah, it starts at such a young age too, because while you're talking about this, I'm thinking about all the times I'm at the park with my son and I'm, oh my gosh, don't do that, because I don't want him to fall and hurt himself. And that's one of my biggest struggles as a mom, is I have to step back and go, it's okay. Worst that's going to happen is we, go to the doctor. Okay, big deal. And it's so hard to step back and let them make mistakes, but it is really necessary.
Yeah, and it's not just like extreme physical safety or keeping away from drugs and all that stuff. It's also, we all know that kid who got to college and didn't know how to do their own laundry, right? So from early on, my kids may have groused about having to do laundry and all the things in the house, but when they would, I would say, I'm teaching you to be your own person, and you're not going to magically know these things at 18. I need to teach them to you. And so they go, and then they do all the things that I try to teach them to do.
Do it.
Yeah, well, I've been doing their diapers and their clothes long enough. I think it's time for them to do their own stuff as much as possible. My kids are great. They help quite a bit, but
it's hard sometimes to know what that balance is for their age too, because life happens and we get caught up, and I try to parent intentionally, but there's all sorts of things that that just get in the way. It's life. It's busy, and I try to teach my daughter about, these type of, I didn't learn how to cook really. And it's that much harder, I think, once you turn 18 and you're on your own or you're in college, to learn these type of things. Being a kid and learning how to cook, to me, would be so fantastic, because I don't know if I'm ever going to learn how. I was in Korea, tried to learn how to cook. That was almost impossible with limited ingredients and having to do conversions, which, as an engineer in me was like, oh, okay, conversions, that's not too bad. But, things get in the way. So it's important. It's great to teach your kid those skills. But we always, there's so many things, we're teaching them about inclusivity. We're teaching them about life skills. We're teaching them about independence. We're teaching them resiliency. Like, there's so much.
Curiosity, empathy.
Empathy. And, it seems overwhelming sometimes to me, but, I kind of have this joke that I make to myself, which is like, I don't yet know what she's going to need therapy for. Like, it's going to be something.
Oh my gosh, I think about that all the time.
But I just don't know what it is, because it's going to be that thing that I didn't do as much because I was so busy trying to do all the other things,
Yes. I totally get that. Yeah, I'm going to... it's my turn. My parents would try to tell me how to parent at one point, and I'd say, you had your chance, you did all your mistakes, and now I'm getting to make all my mistakes on mine. You just let me do me. And I figure they're going to have a whole set of problems, but they're not going to be the problems that I had.
I was just going to say,
pendulum swings.
I'm not going to repeat your mistakes. I'm going to make my own.
My very own. Thank you.
I'm independent. I'm going to make my own mistakes.
Yes, watch me. So I just want to ask for callers again, 512-686-0279, anything that has to do with secular parenting. Also, I mentioned godless bitches a minute ago, but then I forgot to say, part of what we're talking about is awareness of gender and that sort of thing. And this week from today, Godless Bitches is going to have a very special guest from the Texas Freedom Network to talk about some bills that are in the Texas legislature that want to limit professionals' liability for treating people who are LGBTQA based on the professional's religion. This is in the actual, it's passed. It got out of committee and it went through I think the House, and I'm not sure if it's made it to the Senate yet. I guess it hasn't, because I haven't seen the headlines that say, Texas is fucked up again. But they're going to talk about that next week. And so there's an important issue that Godless Bitches will be talking about with a really great person from Texas Freedom Network.
This is just one more example of, I hear all the time, in activism and identifying as a lesbian that, well, it's 2019. Nobody really cares about that stuff anymore. Like, what are you worried about? Well, these are real issues that are happening every single day. And I have a lot of hope. I wanted to say faith, hope for, my son's generation and your guys' children's generation, but you just never know. You never know how it's going to end up. Yeah. And it's not worth the risk.
Right.
That's why we have to be active about, being inclusive and caring about these things.
Well, we know that things don't just change when the law changes, right? We know that in the past, when we've had a big law passed on a social issue, like we had in 2015 with the Obergefell versus, I can't remember the other. Do you remember, Kendall?
Oh, yeah, and
the case that guaranteed marriage equality in the Supreme Court. That was, I think, summer of 2015. And I was actually in Korea for that, so I was disappointed that I couldn't join in the celebrations. But we know in the past from the law changing in cases like slavery or in cases like women. Achieving equality in the workplace, things like that. There was, I think, something passed in the 80s around sexual harassment. We know that it doesn't all of a sudden just stop what happens. We know that. We've seen it happen in the past. So just because the law has been passed that says we have marriage equality does not mean that there's not other ways that we are discriminated against.
Right. Because they can still deny, I just saw the other day, there was a wedding venue that refused to take a lesbian couple's money. I mean, why? It's just, it baffles me.
So there's, what were you just talking about, Noelle? Can you help me out? My brain just lost that.
The law? Was it before that? When I was talking about the laws changing and the discrimination?
I think I took us on a tangent. I apologize.
No, it's not you at all. It's my brain.
Well, you
brain. This is your brain on drugs, kids. Don't do it. Don't do it.
You were talking about the law in Texas. We were talking about,
Oh, yes. And thank you for that. Thank you for priming my brain. Yes, as a behaviorist, I know what you just did there. We have to... on today's topic, which has to do with sexism and the rights for anybody to love anybody any way that they want to, those folks I just mentioned can fight all they want. Nothing's going to change until the people that are on the other side of it decide that things are going to change and help. Allies are important. So what we're talking about today, I have a girl and a boy. And whenever something happens that puts a ding in women's reproductive rights, sometimes people will say, oh, you have a little girl, so this is... I'm like, I also have a little boy. He needs to play. He needs to jump in here, too. It's just as important for me to talk to him about these things as it is to talk to her about these things. And I don't care what your kid's gender is, everybody needs this stuff. And so what we were going to do is talk about the things that we have done, specific examples, to help parent our kids so that they are a little more aware of gender, sex, orientation, and bodily autonomy. And who wants to go first? And call in with yours if you have a good one.
Kendall, do you want to go first since you have the youngest?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I've got a few different things relating to that. So the first one, we'll tackle, let's say, gender identity. My son, he's 3.5 years old, and he hasn't done it in a while, but for a while, he's still learning pronouns. And he would be, the best conversations come when you're just laying in bed and trying to get him to go to sleep. And he would be like, well, mommy, am I a he or a she? And I would tell him, you can be whatever you want, babe. What sounds good to you? You want to be he or she? And every time he would pick he. And to me, that is such proof, because I've never, primed him to think that he has to be a boy or he has to be masculine or any of those things. And, so many people will say that parenting like this will influence your children to have a different gender identity than the one assigned at birth. And that's just not the case at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, he is a boy to his core. And if someday he decides he's not, then that's totally fine. Like, and I think that's also something that a lot of parents are afraid of is, what if my kid is wrong? What if it's a phase? Well, so what if it is? So today I call him she, and tomorrow I call him he, and the next day I call them they. Who cares? You respect them, take them seriously, and give validity to their questions.
Yes.
And to their, exploration in their identity. And then I would say another thing, as far as bodily autonomy goes, and I talk about this a lot, is I'm very, very strict about that, because as Claire was saying, allies are important. While they're not, they're separate from, right, like from the LGBT community or whatever, and from women, but they are important because let's say we're talking about women's issues. Men don't listen to women about women's issues, but they will listen to other men. And that's why it is so important. Well, my son, I see it as a great privilege to raise him. When I first had a boy, I was totally torn apart because I am a single mom. And I thought, what if I can't relate to him? What if I don't understand him? And I was so freaked out. And then, I came to realize I have the great privilege of making sure that at least one boy, one man in this world will be a good person, will be a good ally to feminists. And that makes me feel good. And so one of the ways that I do that is my son, anytime, of course, aside from in our home and with me, and he's very close with my roommate, who is essentially his uncle. If he wants to give someone a hug or give someone a kiss, he has to ask their permission first. And I think a lot of people see that as very militant and extreme. But the thing is, it's that person's body. It's not my son's body. He doesn't get to decide when he's going to hug or kiss them. And I think that instilling that in him now will give him a greater respect for other people's space when he grows up, particularly women, because our personal space, as you know, is always being violated. And so it's very important to me. And he totally abides by it. If he wants to give someone a hug or a kiss, he asks them, can I give you a hug? Can I give you a kiss? And yeah, I mean, I like to think that I'm raising a very respectful and aware kid. And it comes, I even enforce this when it comes down to chasing girls, asking girls to play with him at the park. Everything that he does, especially when it relates to little girls, I make sure he asks, because I know what it's like to be a little girl whose space, even if it's not hugging or kissing, whose space is being invaded and whose wishes are being ignored by little boys. So that's my thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And Kendall, your son is 3. Is that right? Is he 3?
Yes.
Yeah, 3. Okay.
Mm-hmm. If a 3-year-old can do it,
yeah,
certainly
if a 3-year-old can do it.
Presidential candidates could do it, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Seems kind of tough.
Can't teach an
dog new tricks.
president new tricks.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, the bodily autonomy thing, just to dovetail with that. Folks, if you are introduced to a child and the parent says, give so-and-so a hug, give you a hug from the child, the child doesn't have to do that. I've had so many parents when they either meet me or they leave and they have their child, give Claire a hug. I'm like, no, that's their choice.
Yeah.
If they want to do that, they can. I'm not gonna make the child do anything that he or she doesn't want to do.
That is such a hard thing. It's so hard, especially like with my grandparents. Every time we leave, my mom says, give great grandma and great grandpa a hug. And it's, and I know there's something to be said for they lived through a lot of revolutions and they have the ability to do better. But at the same time, how do I tell him, how do I let him make that choice when I know and I need to take a leaf out of your book, because that's one of the things I need to work on. That's a weakness of mine where I go, okay, you didn't need to suck it up and give him a hug, but it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't have to be that way.
My parenting expert friend, the way she does it, she modeled it from me. I learned most of what I know about parenting from Katie Malinsky. And by the way, she does do remote counseling. If you ever want to contact her, it's katiemalinsky.com. She always says to her kids, how do you want to say goodbye to so-and-so?
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah, how do you want to say goodbye? You can just say goodbye. Or, an option is to just look at the floor and walk out. Really, they're children. And they can give a hug if they want to or whatever. And the adult should just stand there and wait and see. Because you have the power imbalance is tremendous there.
Yeah.
Your wants and wishes need to be kept in check because that is a child. And
you're so right.
Yeah, it's just like Joe Biden hugging on a woman who's about to go on stage and make it. The power differential matters.
It does matter.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I took a little bit of a different focus because I have a daughter as far as the bodily autonomy because, my focus was a little more about her bodily autonomy being, and not that for boys, their bodily autonomy can't be violated.
It is a power dynamic, though.
It is a power, yeah. But I knew that it was likely the messages that she would get from society over the years, especially as she's, would become a teenager and a pre-teenager and just all sorts of messages about our bodies that we get, if we present as women, that our bodies aren't our own, that our bodies are sexual, that our bodies are for men, that our bodies are only valuable if they are if they are sexually pleasurable for men, or all the things that we get, all those messages that we get about our bodies, and that teen girls get about being good enough and conforming to certain standards. And to me, it all ties in together. It all ties in together for her. It's a message for her that she will get about her wishes and her ownership of her body. And so, we definitely did I would never force her to give hugs or kisses, but she was always a super social child. She's always been super social. So she's been, I can't think of very many times when she wouldn't want to hug or kiss somebody. Even when we meet people, I think, I tend to not really know a stranger, that's just how I am kind of with people for the most part. And so I think she sees that. And so, but I have been very conscious and aware of teaching her that, her decisions about her body, she's picked out her own clothes since she was 3 or 4. To me, it's just clothes. Since she was kindergarten, at least, she would pick out her own clothes. And sometimes I'll say well, it's this degrees out, it's this many degrees out today, so you need a long sleeve shirt.
I have to keep you safe. You need to be a little warmer.
She picks a long sleeve shirt, or now she'll actually ask, she'll be like, hey, Google, what's the weather today? And then it's 7.
Oh my goodness.
She'll pick out her
Oh my
clothes.
Gosh, that works.
And,
that works.
We are in Texas, so it's not like there's very many freezing times. But so, and also just kind of teaching that that autonomy of making decisions. You make decisions about your hair. Can I brush your hair?
Yeah. Before you brush hair and do that sort of thing,
ask. Can I brush your hair? Yeah. And sometimes she would say no, and I'd be like, okay. And she'd go to school she'd go to school with her hair like that. And you know what? It's hair. It doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter as much as her knowing that it's her choice. And we have some books that we've read. There's a great book that I like called I'm the Boss of My Body.
Right.
I can't remember who it's by, but it's called I'm the Boss of My Body, and it's about a little boy, and it's his birthday. And his name is Miles, I think, and he goes through, and all these people are touching him and hugging him and kissing him and pinching his cheek to tell him happy birthday. And finally, he has enough, and he just says, he just said, "That's it." And he kind of has a little outburst, and he goes to his room. And, he's thinking, gosh, I really don't want all these people touching me. And then his parents come to his room and he asks if he's in trouble. And they say, of course you're not in trouble. We're so proud of you for, you're the boss of your body. And, you can say.
Only that were reality for everyone.
I know. And it's a great book. And she loves it. And there have been times, actually, I think, that she has not felt that so much that she will then go and get the book. It's almost like she's reminding herself that I'm the boss of my body. I'm the boss of my body. That. So
super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to, I know I already gave my spiel, but I've got a neighbor. I just found out that I have a neighbor right next door she's a single mom too. She's actually gay also. And she has a little girl. She's 5, I think. And part of raising a boy, in my opinion, when it comes to bodily autonomy and toxic masculinity and all of that stuff, sometimes you have to be on your kid's case when it is, that situation, because this little girl, her name is Jackson. She's very submissive. She's very sweet, and she's so understanding and forgiving. And she'll immediately, Silas, because he's so much younger, he'll snatch a toy from her, or he'll, they're drawing together and he'll draw on her drawing. And it's funny. Her mom has taught me so much, because I'll sit there and I'll start scolding him and she'll go, no. Let's let Jackson handle it. And she'll be like, Jackson, you need to tell him that wasn't nice. And it's refreshing almost as a mom to be like, yeah, this is how he's going to be in society someday. He needs to learn that people are going to give him boundaries and tell him what he can't do, and he needs to respect that. And that's when I can come and enforce that, as if he doesn't listen to them. Right. So it's funny. It's a constant, we're over there, and it's like I'm anti my son almost, like from an outsider perspective, because I'll be like, Jackson, don't let him do that to you. You tell him to stop. You tell him that's mean. You tell him that's bossy. And but it is sometimes you have to be that person, because they need to learn.
Yeah. My son was very physical when he was little. He loved to crash into people and roughhouse and all that sort of stuff. And it was really hard. He didn't want to listen to that. When I would say, doing that, not everybody is going to enjoy that. And when you hurt people, because he would hurt people on occasion, I'd say that's not okay. And we do all the apologies and all that stuff. But the key thing that I would say to him is, because it was a sensory issue for him. Hard, deep touch was important to him as a sensory thing. And I said, this friend loves you a lot and likes to be with you, but if you keep doing this and hurting them, they may not want to play with you anymore. And eventually that did happen. And it was a powerful lesson for him. It was hard and it was heartbreaking, but it's better that he learned it then than later. I mean, why isn't this friend wanting to play with me? And
that's very sad.
The thing we talked about happened, honey, and he had to take that into consideration.
That's great that you let that happen, though, and you didn't. Yeah. I mean, that is hard. Like, we want to protect our kids, right? And we want our kids to have good experiences. And for me, it would have been really hard not to intervene in some way and say, talk to the parent.
He doesn't mean it, or
Well, yeah, or just trying to get that boundary, more. But I mean, that happened, and he learned that.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah.
And
then he had one friend who was not a boyfriend who was not the least bit aggressive and kind of frail, and he would crash into him and try to tussle and stuff. And the father would say, "Oh, it's good for him. It helps toughen him up." I'm like, "No, my son should not do that. That's not cool. He needs to let your son be if he wants to be left alone." Mm-hmm. So there's all sorts of stuff in there for boys.
Claire, do you have any experience as far as gender identity goes with your kids?
Here's one that's concrete and one that I just decided to do when we read books, lots and lots of books. And as I read all these children's books.
Oh, I love Verdi.
Yep, Verdi, and Mo Willems, The Pigeon and all those, and Elephant and Piggy. And here's another one, My Darling, Nugget and Darling. And what do all of the main characters have in common? They're all boys. And if you do look up the numbers, and I did do this online quite a while ago, it's really tough to find books that have female protagonists. And if you want black female protagonists, good luck. You have to actively search. And so I did actively search for a lot of them. And like one of the books that we read quite a bit was the book about Ruby Bridges and some other books. But there's something you can do in the meantime because books are still catching up. And that is to do this. I'm just going to read from this book the same way I would have read to my kids. Some books can do this. Let me get my reading glasses. Gather round, children. Okay. One day, Nugget, who is the dog and the main person here, heard a small noise. She swept her nose back and forth, searching. What was it? Nugget poked under the leaves and sniffed. A kitten! A tiny, wet kitten! Nugget grabbed Nell's pants with her teeth and pulled. Come on! She raced ahead. You see, I just messed up there a little bit. I changed any time that it doesn't matter to the story. Sometimes it matters. Any time that it doesn't matter to the story, change pronouns to she.
I love that.
My kids, they couldn't read for quite a while when I would do this. And then as they started to read, they noticed that I was changing. They're like, that doesn't say she, that says he. I'm like, yeah. And here's why I've done that. It's because I have a daughter and a son. I'd say I and she are going to be overwhelmed with he, him, his. Every book I ever read was he, him, his. And when you get out in the world, men are still in power. At least in this one small way, I want you to get into your head that women are everywhere and they're important. And this is one small way that I can do that.
I'm gonna cry. I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And my son chafed a little bit. He is something of a reluctant feminist. He hates that it's true. He doesn't want it to be true. And when I talk to him about it, he's like, I just want the world to be better. I'm like, me too. But
so you think it's like a guilt thing for him? Like he's upset that he's in some way like a part of that group?
I think there is a little bit of guilt in there. And negotiating that for me has been somewhat tricky because he does need to be a feminist. But when I was the reason I did that was because when I was in college as an undergrad, I took a course and we did an exercise where we were all closed our eyes. Ooh, I forgot to do the breathing thing. We need to do the breathing exercise. We all closed our eyes, and the teacher read a thing, and it said, imagine that in your lifetime, every news reporter you've ever seen is a woman. Every congressperson you've ever seen was a woman. Imagine that every boss you've ever had was a woman. Imagine that when you listen to the radio, the voices you hear are women's voices telling you about the news. Imagine that every teacher you've had has been a woman. And he went through this big, long thing, and he also talked about how men were considered weaker because, their genitals are on the outside and they're vulnerable. And they're not quite as strong as women because they can't give birth, and so we have to take care of them. And, it just reversed everything. And when he got done, he finished it, and the whole classroom was just stone cold quiet. And he said, "How do you feel, everybody?" And I was like, powerful. It's like, that was so opposite of my experience. It made a huge difference to have all those pronouns switched, because I did grow up.
I hadn't even thought about it.
Oh, Kendall, you're young.
I hadn't even thought about how many people.
Yeah, you're young. So, but when I was young, Barbara Walters was a thing. Everybody makes fun of her. Everybody makes fun of her.
Barbara Walters is?
Yeah, Barbara Walters
I
was,
do.
A thing. And when I went to see Captain America with my daughter, and I sat there and cried, and she, because it's a woman. A woman is going to save the universe.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's just not what I had.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the movie, sorry, Claire, go ahead.
Sorry. The only powerful female hero I had as a child that counted, I loved Wonder Woman. I loved her, but again, she was very sexualized. But the one that really I loved was Ripley in Alien. She was badass. She kicked ass.
The one
She
that
was
Sigourney
powerful.
Weaver
Sigourney Weaver
Yeah,
played.
okay.
Right. That was a pivotal thing for me. I didn't do horror movies, but I went to see that one in the theater because that was the only way you could do it back then, over and over again, because this was my one powerful woman role model up there. And it makes a difference.
Yeah, I would relate that to not gender, but sexual identity, sexuality.
Yeah.
Because when I was 18 and graduating high school, it was 95, and that was when Ellen came out, around the time that Ellen came out. Mm-hmm. And, I was an adult, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't have that throughout my whole childhood. Mm-hmm. We didn't have people who were out about a different sexual identity. If they were, and I think, a little bit sheltered from that, but if they were, it was kind of a joke. Like, oh yeah, this person was, an Olympic athlete and now they're a woman, or whatever. And it was like this joke or something. And I think at first when you were telling that story, I was thinking about the reaction of the men, like, oh, they would feel maybe like we felt. I was thinking, they would feel like, there's nobody out there who's a role model for me. And then when you said powerful, I was like, that, like,
I thought the same thing. She totally took the positive out of that, because the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm having a pity party going, oh my God, that's so true. Like, I've never really had, a female role model, but she totally took it a different direction.
I know. And it was like, to me, it was like, it's not just about, I mean, if you think about the way things are now or have been with more male role models, of course they feel powerful, right? Of course they feel powerful. Like, and of course we feel like, there's nobody representing me up there. And so, like, for you to say that you felt powerful, like, so it's not just about, it's not just about seeing the role model or whatever, but that feeling that creates inside of you.
Matters.
That feeling of power or disenfranchisement or whatever. And that can be applied to any minority group.
Yeah. If you don't get it, if you don't understand why diversity matters, I want to shake you. That's not a very good thing to say. If you don't get it, sorry, I'm still a little high. If you
We're
don't,
not talking about drugs anymore,
right?
Claire.
I'm sorry. If you don't get it, it's because that's not your experience, and you need to listen. You need
because
to
you're
listen.
privileged,
You're
essentially.
privileged, yeah. And those of us with less privilege in whatever ways, we like to say, why are you so threatened by this? Of course they're threatened by this, and I don't blame them. They're going to lose power. They're going to lose status. Yeah, that's going to be the cost of stepping up and doing the right thing. That's a tough thing. I get it.
That's the thing is if you're thinking about the status that you're going to lose or the power that you're going to lose, you're basically have that at the expense of others. Like, please just try to step around and think about others, because the only reason, if you have privilege in an area and you're worried or feeling defensive about losing that power, the only reason you have that power is because somebody else doesn't. And that's not fair. That's not a just world to live in. I don't want power at the expense of someone else. I don't want, I don't want privilege. And it's interesting that you said, but I have it, right? And so I have to go about doing things so that that privilege doesn't mean as much. It doesn't mean as much someday. Someday.
But not only that. No, you're right. But not only that, but you have to, for me, there are ways that I'm underprivileged and there's ways that I am privileged. And the ways that I am privileged, you have to use your privilege to eliminate it. And that's such a weird thing to say, but it's true,
Well, because those of us who are not in power in a way that we're part of a marginalized community, we can fight and fight and fight and fight. We can talk and talk and talk and talk. And we can do 100 things. And if the person in privilege does 10, it's going to probably have around the same impact. Like the person in privilege doing those things to help. And I want to go back to what you said about your son kind of feeling guilty, because I think that can be a hard thing to get past, right? Because either sometimes we can feel guilty about our privilege, or we can feel defensive about it. Like, well, it's not gotten me anything. What have it gotten me? But the fact is that it
also hasn't hurt you,
Right. And we need to kind of put those feelings aside and figure out what can we do about it. Like if we sit there and feel guilty and we continue to feel guilty, then we won't want to talk about it because it'll make us feel bad, right? Or if we feel, defensive or whatever, then we're going to want to avoid these conversations because they make us feel bad. But if there's a way that we can kind of put that in a box or set that aside and say, no, I'm going to have this conversation. I'm going to have this discussion. I'm going to, listen to people from this marginalized community and we can be talking about any marginalized community here. And say, and have them say, what do you need? Like, say to them, what do you need? What do you need? And then do it like what we're doing with our kids right here, like.
Yeah. I point out, since we're sticking with gender and sex and orientation stuff, I point out to my kids these differences. So my daughter, like I was saying, watching Captain America, I'm sitting there crying because this is so amazing. And she's just looking at me and I'm like, honey, I know this is just wallpaper to you. You have so many powerful women in movies. It's redonkulous. The whole Avengers thing, all the women in there, and then Wonder Woman, holy cats. Such good stuff. And it's just wallpaper to her. It's just like, yeah, of course it's there. And I'm like, oh, honey.
This is no idea.
Yes, you need to realize that that's just the start. And I also, here's something else that I talked to her about. The movie Captain America, and I want to research this more, more closely. And I talk to my kids about this, so we're still talking about kids. This is the sort of way I educate my kids, okay? You have all of the Avengers movies, all of them, and you look at the reviews, and even the ones that, the movies that are considered to be good, like, the Iron Man movies or whatever. Oh, there are scathing reviews about the bad acting and the stupid dialogue and oh my gosh, this is awful and awful. And then it gets the rating. And then you read the reviews of Captain America, and the reviews are all kind of like, why are they so concerned about her emotions? And then they're really hung up on that because that's what you do with women. Okay, so there's the first problem. They're only hung up on that one thing. And then they talk about how, well, she just kind of, I don't know. Does that sound familiar? Kind of like when we talk about Elizabeth Warren or Hillary Clinton or anybody else. They just, I don't know. And you look at the review, there's nothing else said, nothing of substance said. And here's Iron Man's review, and here's Captain America in terms of numbers. And then the same thing with the Wonder Woman movie. So I point this out to my daughter. It's like, yes, you have those role models, but we're not there yet, because these movies, the Wonder Woman and Captain America, are just as good as any of the other superhero movies. Just as good, if not better, in many ways. But it's not received well. And much of it has to do with the fact that, especially in Wonder Woman, it's a woman's movie. It was a woman's movie. There were powerful women throughout, and it was a woman's society, and a woman fighting World War II, and a woman kicking ass in World War II, and all these things that are the world of men. And men are probably sitting there going, I don't get it, whatever. And of course the reviews are going to be worse because there are more men who review movies, and their way of looking at it is going to be biased by their experience. Our experience is that, wow, wouldn't that have been awesome if Wonder Woman had been involved in World War II and kicked some ass and all these things. We look at it very differently, and that's important. That's the very heart of why having diversity in front of your face and bringing the experience from a diverse sort of population is so important. Because if you don't have your experience represented up there somewhere, somehow, you're left out. I have learned, like most women, to love superhero movies that focus on men. We do it all the time. It needs to turn. It needs to be that men can appreciate a superhero woman just as much as we appreciate the superhero man. So this is the sort of stuff, and my daughter, gets a little eye rolly at me, but I think it's important, and I think she gets it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I just want to remind people real quick to call in if they have questions. Don't forget to call in. The number is 512-686-0279. Please do call in if you have parenting questions.
We only have about 20 minutes more.
20 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, was there another announcement? We already did the newsletter, right? And I did the Godless Bitches thing. Yep. Okay.
Kendall, were you going to say something?
Sorry.
Oh yeah, just it's just another example of the privilege I feel as far as being able to raise a son, which, like I said in the beginning, I was nervous, and now I'm like, this is good. This is a good thing. There's a cartoon series right now called DC Superhero Girls, and it's only about the superhero girls. He loves it, loves the crap out of it, wants to watch it all the time, and it's funny. He doesn't think twice about it. It's not like he recognizes that they're any different from the other superheroes. And in fact, there are a lot of, boy superheroes that he doesn't really care for, doesn't really like the Ninja Turtles, doesn't really like Superman, doesn't really like Spider-Man. But yeah, DC superhero girls, he'll eat that up. And, it's nice that media is changing. And what I was going to bring up earlier, a great example of one that I just sit there and bawl my eyes out to, like you were saying about Captain Marvel, is Brave. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Brave.
Yes.
I will just sob and sob, and from the
Every
second
time.
it starts, I'm just sobbing.
Yep,
Because
every
it's just
time.
it's beautiful. Two, the characters are wonderful, and three, it's just like there's no prince, there's nobody to save her. She's in control of her destiny. Just what and we're seeing it more and more in new movies, and I'm thankful at least that there's more representation coming.
Yeah, and the king adores his daughter and,
oh my God,
adores his wife, and everybody treats everybody well. There's no this sort of thing, and it's a beautiful movie.
I love that. I watched.
In fact, I would say the king respects the queen more. He's like almost afraid of her because she's got kind of the power.
It's funny. It's funny that we're talking about Brave, because I think I was home alone and I watched it. Like, I was like, I love this movie. I'm gonna watch it.
Oh yeah.
So good.
The funny thing is that I was noticing how, they're kind of arguing down in the hall, and they're, they're kind of fighting over like, oh, whose son is going to marry the princess, and then like the queen comes in and they all shut up. It's like they have this, automatic kind of respect for her or whatever, that it's. And it's, I mean, I think there's still...
it flips on its head, the typical thing where the king walks in and everybody's quiet.
Yeah.
The queen is...
I think it's a little bit... it still has a few things that I would like to see as different, but overall, it's just a great movie.
Yeah.
So I like it a lot. Yeah. I was going to say that I would do the switching of the gender pronouns in books with my daughter, but I would switch them back and forth. Like, I would, we would read The Giving Tree a lot.
I love that book.
I see a lot of comments on... Yeah, we've had this conversation, Claire. I've seen a lot of comments on Facebook about this book and people not liking it. And... instead of not reading it, first I would switch the pronouns sometimes, and I would make the boy the girl, and I would make the tree the boy. But also, I would kind of use it as this lesson of what happens when we give too much to someone, because it is that story about the tree giving, and the boy is happy, and the tree gives, and the boy is happy, and then he leaves, and the tree's a stump, and then she's happy because the boy is with her. And, that whole part of the story is kind of ick to me. Like, it's kind of...
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah. And here's the thing. The boy isn't really happy. He's just more satisfied. He's gotten what he wants. And, the unending giving thing, no. It's like... this gets back to our mothers, Kendall. It's like, I've given and stuff enough. I still want to keep my leaves and my apples. You can go chop some other tree down, but not me.
Right. And at some point, I think to me, that's the lesson in the book, is that, and we would always talk about it after we read them. Not always. Okay, I can't say not always, but we would talk about it a lot of times after reading the book. Like, do you think the tree was happy at the end? Why do you think the tree kept giving him things? Do you think the tree was thinking about what the tree wanted? And that kind of thing. Like, just kind of thinking around this, like,
let's talk about codependence, honey.
Yeah, like what happens when you give and you give and you give, and how do you set those boundaries to make sure that I'm not giving just because you asked me for something?
It's a super teachable moment.
Yeah. Right. So, and she likes it. I would say that, this was my favorite book when I was a kid, and it was. And so she knows now that it was my favorite book, but I think part of the reason why it has been a favorite of mine is because of the lesson, because of that possibility for teaching that lesson. So, but back to switching the pronouns, really, it doesn't, you can switch some things, it doesn't matter. Like you said, in stories where it doesn't matter, you can switch. You can say she, one time you read it, you can say he, another time you read it, and it doesn't matter. Like, really, I hope for our kids and the generations after that we won't have such strong ideas about what is male and what is female, and and that people can just be people, and that the gender doesn't matter, as much. And I don't think we're there yet, but
nowhere near.
No, I mean, even my 3.5-year-old, and I don't know where he picked this up, because I never ever encourage him. I never tell him that pink isn't for him, or that, he's got Minnie Mouse pull-ups right now because those are the ones he chose. And yesterday we were at the store and I got a little bit of money and I said, you can pick out a small toy. And so we're walking around and we go into an aisle where there's mostly pink toys. And he goes, no, these are girl toys. I don't want these ones. I said, there's no such thing as girl toys or boy toys. What are you talking about? He's like, no, these are girl toys. And I'm like, is it from TV? Is it from YouTube? Because he watches videos on YouTube. I don't know where it's coming from, and it's scary that it's that ingrained into everything these kids are consuming, that it's affecting them even before they even go to school,
It can be one child that does it. My son, right. Everything he had was pink. And my father-in-law was concerned that we were going to turn him gay. And I was like, it doesn't quite work that way. But when he went to preschool, or it was kindergarten, it was a very small class, but all the other boys liked pink too, just coincidentally. It was very interesting. Pink backpacks, pink lunch boxes, pink shirts, pink shoes, pink to pink to pink to pink. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, my son was like, I'm not wearing pink anymore. And I'm like, okay, all right. Why? I'm not going to talk. He wouldn't talk to me about it. We found out the next year that there was this kid who had some problems, who turned every child off of pink. Every child. Even the girls wouldn't wear pink after this child got through with them. And it just broke my heart. And to this day, he says, I hate pink. And it's because that lizard brain is still holding that shame and crap that this 6-year-old kid put on him. And it doesn't take much to poison the well there at all, unfortunately.
I want to, we've talked a lot about gender. I want to talk about sexuality a little bit, sexual orientation. Because, we kind of said we would talk about that. I want to make sure we talk about that before the end of the show. So, does that work?
Yep, go on. Yeah. You do it.
My daughter is 7. So, about when she was in kindergarten, she started talking about wanting a boyfriend. Good thing she's not here for this part. I was shocked because I don't remember it happening that early.
Oh, I knew who I was going to marry when I was in kindergarten.
I was much older before I thought about it at all. And so, that she was writing down boys that she liked. And at one point, I think it was in first grade after she had gone to a summer camp, she said, Mom, we were talking, laying in bed, talking, like you said, best conversations.
It's true.
And she said, Mom, how do I get a boyfriend?
Oh, Lordy.
You don't.
And I was like...
That's a loaded question.
I was like, oh my gosh, how am I even going to? And I didn't have a lot of time to think about this, but what I ended up saying, and I'll put it out there so we can even unpack it a little bit and maybe figure out a better thing to do. But I ended up saying that, when two people decide that they want to be, and here I am trying to figure out how to say it for a first grader, but like two people decide that they want to have that relationship, and then they decide what that means for them. Because I didn't want to teach her that having a boyfriend, and obviously I'm not going to talk about, if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you have sex, I didn't want to bring that into it. She's too young. So instead I kind of talk, well, you both decide, you both agree that you want to, you want that person to be your boyfriend or girlfriend, and they want to be. And then I said, and then you decide what that means. I said, that means that you spend Wednesdays playing on the playground together, if that means that you hold hands, if that means that you eat lunch together every day, you decide what that means. Because I think we're coming to this point where relationships they don't have to be one thing. And I have a lot of poly friends, and it
that
doesn't.
even reminds me of inclusivity of asexual people, because
Right.
a lot of romantic relationships, they are not sexual. They don't have
Right.
to be sexual.
Right. And so I think it can mean whatever the two people define it as, really. Like, even marriage, marriage can be whatever you want it to mean. Some people can have a marriage that's one way, and some people have a marriage another way. And one thing that I've learned in being married is just that I had all sorts of different ideas and preconceptions about what I expect from a marriage or what I expect from myself in a marriage.
Yeah.
And if you don't have conversations with your spouse or with your partner about what that means, then you're just setting yourself up for a lot of conflict.
Yep.
So, that's one reason that I wanted to make it that way for her, is that I don't want to throw this idea in her head that marriage is this or marriage is that, boyfriend and girlfriend is this or boyfriend girlfriend is that. So I think it should mean whatever those two people agree. And then and I did also kind of talk about, and I have mentioned sometimes, that mommy's had boyfriends and mommy's had girlfriends. And we have had some conversations about if you like boys or if you like girls or if you like both. And it hasn't gotten very in-depth because, she's 7. But, trying to normalize that, the idea that, okay, you want a boyfriend, that's great. If I also want to say, if you decide you want a boyfriend or a girlfriend, I'll say that sometimes, because it doesn't, just because she's 7 and she wants a boyfriend doesn't mean at some point she's going to decide that she's not going to want a girlfriend. So I'm trying to keep it open like that in a lot of different ways. But then it's super hard to answer questions.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
But then it's a double lesson there. It's not only the information, but also the answers are complicated. They're gray. They're the black and white stuff. That's the property or the world of religion largely, and the real world has all sorts of variation, and it's always yes but or no but. There's more to the story than just a simple answer.
Well, I think we also have to teach our daughters it's not just about our bodies, but about our needs, and thinking about and talking about and communicating what our needs are, because we also do get that message as women that,
be nice,
make other people comfortable. And I can be a little bit of a word stickler sometimes, but I do not like the word nice.
Yeah.
I do not like it when people say that to Sonia. I'll say be kind, be kind to others. I talk about healthy choices or unhealthy choices. We don't talk about good and bad choices.
I like that.
Just those types of language choices, I think, can make a big difference, a big difference. Because I know when I was a kid, I would be told, you're bad, you're being bad, or you're bad. Why are you bad? Why are you being bad, or whatever? And I don't really think that people are good or bad. I just think we make healthy choices. We make unhealthy choices for ourselves, or we make hurtful choices, or not hurtful choices toward others, And so just thinking about what language you use and how you use it with your kid, I think is something that if you're trying to parent intentionally around these issues, it's something super important. And there may be different words that different people are have some meaning around. So it doesn't have to be these words.
I'm taking a lesson home from that one, because I often am guilty of saying, you're being bad. Why are you being bad? Thank you for that, because and I think it's so important as a parent too, to do that, to take a step back and go, oh, I've been doing this wrong. Let's change it. And being a parent, you're automatically on the defense because you want to do right. You want to think that you're good and that you're doing good by your kids. But if you're not, you have to, the first step to getting better is to admit that you're wrong, and to say, I was talking the other day about even if my kid calls me out on something, if he'll,
yeah.
I'll be real frustrated, and I'll say something like, "God, you're being annoying, go away," or "You're annoying me." And he'll go, "Mommy, that wasn't very nice." And I'll go, "Oh my God, you're right. That wasn't nice. I'm really sorry. I won't say that again." And I think too many parents are too proud to do those things, but it shows them that, one, you're human, and two, authority is not perfect, and you should stand up for what you believe in and tell somebody if they're not being nice to you.
Yeah, I
set those limits.
Totally agree with that.
Right.
And I think if we're going to end on parenting fails or some note,
please do. I need those. I need all of them.
I would like to share a story that I recently happened to me, which is that my daughter is in Girl Scouts. And they had to recently do this activity where they talked about things that their family was good at. And she picked out.
I love where this is going.
Oh, no, it is. It's bad. Well, anyway, so we picked this, there's a Girl Scout kind of motto or whatever, and you're supposed to pick what would be an important one to your family. And we picked we picked the one about being responsible for what I say and do. And then, or she picked that as our family kind of thing. And then she said what we were each good at. And there's three of us. There's me and my husband and her. Mm-hmm. And she said, she was good at being silly or something like that. And my husband was good at, I don't even remember what she said for him, but it was like, building things or something. And she said I was good at cleaning house. Are you kidding me? Like, after all of the things that I do to try to model, and I work and I try to show her, that women can do whatever. And apparently I'm really good at cleaning house.
Oh, God. Yeah.
We may have great intentions and we may do a lot to try to make these things happen. And sometimes
we undermine ourselves.
We still don't quite get there, or sometimes, or whatever,
We're up against a whole society that wants to put us in that box. And sometimes kids are strong enough to see through that. And that's not any of our faults as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Yeah. It's a teachable moment.
Yeah.
Right.
I would like it to be that that daddy is equally good at cleaning, but we have a history here of women doing the cleaning, and you saw it, and I hope that changes.
Yeah, and it also gave me kind of a jolt because, we had moved 3 years ago, and I hadn't done a lot of kind of reorganizing when we were in Korea, and I hadn't done a lot of reorganizing right when we got back. And lately, in the last 6 months or a year, I've really been focused on it, like trying to knock it out of the way. And it just kind of made me realize, like, maybe you are making this a little bit too much of a priority and modeling that, that to her. Yeah. So it was a little bit of a reality check for me too. Like, you may be focusing on this more than you realize, or she's getting that message without you even intending it. So anyway,
that's a great takeaway from that.
Yeah, I thought I'd share. So, because, we're not, none of us are perfect. Like, we just happen to be here in front of the camera talking about stuff and, and that,
Oh my gosh. Well, we didn't have any callers, but I enjoyed what we talked about, and I hope it helped y'all some watching. And thank you, Kendall, from the West Coast, for joining us today. It was wonderful, as always, to get to chat with you.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Kendall.
Thank you, Noelle, for driving over from Houston to come play in front of the camera.
Yeah, it was really fun talking about drugs and feminism with you guys.
Right.
And intentional parenting.
Coming to all of our TED Talks.
They're laughing on the other side of the wall over there. I need some Doritos in here. Bring me some Doritos. But anyhow, and thank you to the folks on the other side of the wall over there. Vern, Silas, Michelle, and Mark. They all helped put this together. And I think right now you ought to go find your kid and give them a big old hug. Bye.